it's just funny how anti-sales I am and how pro biz dev I am, but we're always selling no matter what. And that's something I've really learned recently. Like I'm selling the fact that hey, honey, like maybe we should get this car instead. It's a little bit more room. We have two kids now. Like I'm
Yeah.
selling it, right?
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but biz dev has many, many forms, and I just don't think it needs to be as scripted or as structured as people think.
Hmm.
It can be very casual, and it can be very lucrative if you do it right.
Welcome to another episode of Brews and BizDev. This week's illustrious guest is Rich Cardona, video strategist. So let's just get into it here, Rich. First of all, thank you so much for coming out, as I like to say, like you came somewhere.
Yeah.
But appreciate you having you on.
No, thank you. I told you right before we started recording, I was like, man, today's just been a disaster. So this is so perfect. I love to talk to people and love biz dev and all that good stuff. So I'm very happy to be here, Paul. So thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So why don't you just go ahead, kind of start off with the elevator pitch, as we like to say, right? So give us the 30 to 60-second version of who you are, what you're doing, what you're up to.
Yeah, I have to say this is so funny. A few weeks ago, I made a link post that said elevator pitches are complete BS, whatever. But I will do my best. Uh,
Good.
the short and sweet. I'm a retired Marine. Spent a couple years in corporate. Did not enjoy it at all. I was just thinking about it this morning. As a matter of fact, how blessed I am to have kind of left that situation. And I started my own. It's a media company. We focus on video marketing for executives who don't have time to create content. So we film, edit, and distribute that content specifically for LinkedIn, just because. I mean, that's where it's at. That's where a lot of their audiences are at, and that's where my audience is at. And we take that off their plate. So I was asked recently, and I hate this question, but it's a necessary question. Like, what problem do you solve? I'm like, I know exactly what problem I solve. Like, I'm not thinking this is a problem I'm solving. Like I know it's a problem that exists and I solve it very well.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. So, and so you, when you say executives, obviously there's the small business, there's the entrepreneurs, right? Like there's that group of folks who have
Mhm.
very real branding and biz dev, aspirations, right? They're being the face of something. You also kind of work with other kinds of executives and like established companies who are looking to, I would assume, kind of build their personal brand and get themselves out there at a professional level.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. So it kind of started with, I would say, smaller businesses. Now I would say we're working with medium-sized businesses. We just signed a deal with a pretty, and I can't disclose yet, but I will let you know once I have. But this is a major company with some major players in it, and they're looking for someone to highlight their leadership team on a regular basis with consistent content. Why? Because they've been spending a ton of money elsewhere on paid reach, and I mean it only goes so far. What I really believe, Paul, is that, and I say this, and I don't mean it in jest, but just people are not interested in the company as much as they are interested in the people, and that's where I specialize. That's where we specialize, and I really enjoy to do that. So now we're kind of reaching that place where we're going to be able to go into corporations and be like, okay, like cool, let me just spend a few days with your CMO or your CFO or your CTO, and people will understand a little bit better like who's working there, why are they working there, why do they do what they do, and that all works to enhance the company brand.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I'm a big proponent of the kind of people first approach to just about every aspect of business, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are non-people aspects. There is software. There is all the kind of stuff that there is to execute, especially on the marketing and sales side. But it's the people that draw other people in. Unless you're, of course, if you're doing some kind of transactional, the widget sales, as everyone
Sure.
likes to say, it's amazing how
Yep.
much that phrase has persisted for like 60 years.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
always the, hey, if you're selling widgets, like that doesn't even exist. But yeah, if you're selling something for $10 online that you're trying to like hit people with Facebook ads just to kind of trick their brain and get them to buy something impulsively, that's one thing. But
Yep.
those of us in B2B for sure, and really most other kinds of more complex sales, you want to know the people involved. You want to, there's a way now to build that whole, like, you do business with people you like, like, and trust, and there's one way we can show that. There's a lot of different ways, right? But content is the one way, and video content in particular, I know from being in that business for a while, right, humanizes people in a certain way, really shows. It's hard as hell to fake. It's hard to hell, unless you're an actor or something, which most of us aren't. So
yeah. Well, I want to mention one thing that you hit on something. You mentioned on the B2B space, and then obviously we're talking about B2C and the widgets a little bit. Like the more I've done this, I've and the more B2B personnel I talk to, especially in marketing. I mean, everyone always talks how much shorter the customer journey is on the B2C side, and how long it could be arduous, and people are involved on the B2B side. But I mean, I think the little, I don't want to say shortcut, but a way to trim that off is literally, like, if you're able to see exactly what we're talking about, some of the video content of the personnel involved. Like, I refuse to believe that in B2B transactions that people still that people don't care about who they'll be working with. Like, okay, like, I got it, the product's great and everything, but I still want to know, what's it going to be like to work with you? What's it going to be like to work with that team? What are the caliber personnel there? And if I am able to see that, I believe, in my opinion, that just makes it an easier decision and might shorten the cycle.
Yeah, no, I'm also, I agree that, I would stick with might, right? Because obviously you can't predict it. Someone will run out there with a post tomorrow and be like, you can shorten the cycle for sure, but it's like, maybe not. It's not the only factor, but it certainly helps, right? If that removes 1 or 2 or 3 extra conversations, that goes a long way, because it's not like those conversations happen on a daily basis. That's like one conversation one week, another conversation the next week. So you can definitely pull weeks out of most cycles if people show up already having a sense that they know you in a certain way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. So how did you, I'm curious, your kind of story, your background coming in, because, you came through, you're in the Marines, and then you're in corporate, you're in Amazon, you're in some places, and then where does this pop up? What's the trigger for, I'm going to get into video and branding, and, where's that leap come from?
What I'm about to say is going to give your audience the most value, and it is, don't do this. What I did. I refused to fail, which is why this worked out. But here's legitimately how it went. I was fed up where I was. I just wasn't even the same person. Marriage wasn't doing so hot. I had a daughter who I was never seeing, and then my wife and I were like, okay. She literally just kind of gave me permission to walk from the job. That was super difficult for me I was 38 years old at the time. I was a provider, right? Like, I was like, really, like, we had this nice big house in Austin, and it just felt good. I felt like I had arrived, and I also felt like I had transitioned, successfully from the military. It takes years, in my opinion, and I was like, I think I finally did it, and I had not. So I literally hit set that late, and I was like, okay, what does this look like? It didn't look like we're just going to hang out in Austin. It looked like we're going to rent this house out, and we're going to move in with my wife's parents, which is insane. I mean, insane to me. But what allowed me to do that was a lot of humility, and realizing I was at the point in my life where it took something that, I don't want to say catastrophic, but that big and momentous for me to realize I just cannot and will not care about what other people think. I need to actually make decisions that are really based on what can help me achieve the most happiness. And starting a business seemed like something, but it was not vivid yet, right? I didn't have the vision in my head. So what I did was I literally experimented with, I always like to say I experimented with my curiosities. And one of those things was when we were on terminal leave, we went to Europe, and I took like 7,000 pictures. It was ridiculous. And how many of them were good? Probably 100, but I loved that. So I experimented with photography. I'm like, this is ridiculous. No way. Then I started doing like promotional videos in this small town in Virginia where we were living. I was like, okay. But what really triggered everything was a mentor of mine. Her name is Claude Silver. She is the chief heart officer at VaynerMedia in New York. If you don't know VaynerMedia, then maybe you know Gary Vaynerchuk. If you don't know Gary Vaynerchuk, definitely look him up. But she had been a mentor, and she had certainly helped me realize during my time at Amazon that there was a way out, and that I was in the driver's seat of my life when I completely was that victim guy. Man.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, why is this happening? Like, oh man, like I'm working so hard and this and that. I mean, it didn't matter. I was being a victim at the time, which is unlike a lot of military members and veterans, I think. So I just wanted to give back to her for helping me during that time. So I just said, you're not on social enough. Like, why are there no videos of you? You're a special person with a very unique position, working for a very high visibility person. Like, why don't I make some content for you? I had no idea what I was doing, by the way. And she said yes. She said yes, like 100%. So I literally figured it out as I went. I wasn't faking it till I didn't fake it till I made it. She allowed me to experiment. And that is when I realized, okay, like, number one, I can hone my skills, but number two was I quickly found out that what I thought making content was, what intriguing content would be was nothing. It was me asking her questions about culture and diversity and stuff that she gets asked all the time. So when the camera was on and we were talking about personal stuff and she was asking me about combat and I was asking her about XYZ, we pull up to VaynerMedia one day and she's like, why didn't you record any of that? And that's literally how the idea was born. I was like, wow, like she is so much more than I thought. And I'm probably so much more than she thought. So how do I bridge that gap, make these people, as you said in the beginning, more relatable, more human, more realistic, especially if people aspire to get to that kind of level at some point. They want to know that these people have successes and failures, that these people, missed their daughter's soccer game and got pissed about it. That they did have a week where they worked 100 hours and it just happened in the blink of an eye and they're going to get no rest and recuperation the following week. So that's all the stuff that I believe the factors that actually make intriguing content and actually bridges people together a little bit better than how we normally perceive it to be on virtual, on social media.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And and interesting, that you could do that with her in that environment, right? Where what her boss is preaching on, amongst many things that he manages to preach, because he's got content in 8 billion directions, right? It's like this jump in, and you were the I forgot most of this, but like you're like the D-Rock in the situation for her, right? You show up like, listen, I'll do this. Like, let's see how this goes. No one's, and I like how you said, like, it's not a fake it till you make it. Because you're not faking something, you're having an honest conversation like, hey, I think this would be great. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing, but I'll figure this out. And it's not like you're pretending to the client, right, that you've got this handled, you've been doing this for years. She's someone who knows that you're taking on something new, and then you find something and then it sticks. You seem, it seems like you like it and you're good at it, which is a pretty great mix to have in the work you're doing.
Yeah. And on the business development side, let me just say, I didn't realize that was business development at the time, by the way, right? Like I was literally offering myself as a resource to someone who could use it. I wasn't salesy about it. I wasn't pitching. I was like, I really think this. I meant it. I wanted to serve. They were very warm to the idea. And it's like, okay, that's kind of how it started. So now it's very easy for me to have conversations with high-level executives or have them on the podcast, and at the end they go, so tell me a little bit more about what you do. And that's never the goal of the podcast, by the way, but it's just funny how anti-sales I am and how pro biz dev I am, but we're always selling no matter what, and that's something I've really learned recently. Like I'm selling the fact that hey honey, like maybe we should get this car instead. It's a little bit more room. We have 2 kids now. Like I'm selling it, right? But BizDev has many forms, and I just don't think it needs to be as scripted or as structured as people think. It can be. It can be very casual, and it can be very lucrative if you do it right.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I think if that fits inside of the model, right, it fits your, we talk a lot about brand strategy here, because that's where the roots of this company are like, branding, what mainly people think of is logos, right? So you say that word, which is one of the reasons this is called Brews and BizDev and not Brews and branding, is because
Yes, I'm
people don't
glad.
extend that concept. They think, oh, here's a logo and here's some colors and whatever. But, branding encompasses everything for us, right? So in our model, the brand that touches, of course, the value you're trying to create for the customers. It touches the people and processes and systems that you're using and how the customers experience dealing with those things. So it's all brand, but most people don't think of it that way.
Yes.
And so we don't call it that, because that's the other challenge of marketing, right? Is you have to talk to people in their words, not yours.
I hate that. Yes, but
Yeah,
you're exactly right. Like,
and same with
this is the
sales.
truth.
If you're having a conversation with someone that you don't want to confuse them in or leave them feeling disconnected or alienated or any of those things, then you speak in their language to them, right? So, where you draw the line between what's marketing and what's sales changes between companies, basically. But that whole flow of figuring out what you're doing and positioning it in a way and communicating that to people who would actually care because it could be helpful is both of those things. Right.
Yes.
And it's encompassed by brand. So I think that's learning, here's where our lane is. And I've talked with people on the show about this, where they've, like, knowing what your lane is, not only worth the kinds of people have talked about ticket price, right? Like what you're selling, and knowing, because some folks are really comfortable with really big money deals, like, let's close a few of these. And some people
Yes.
like kill it selling $100, I don't know, phone systems, right? But if you, so like knowing your lane as far as what you can sell, knowing your lane as far as what your voice is. And for those of us who are in companies that are larger than, like ourselves and a core team, that aligns with your general kind of company and brand voice. And then knowing, especially in today's environment, what you're willing to risk. Because I was interacting with someone on LinkedIn yesterday, and they're talking about someone they had a meeting with who was a coach, had a baseball cap on, and he's like, I'm not going to say which candidate it was, right? But it was like, should you be leading with this? Like, whichever side, should you be leading with these things? And we all have different opinions. We've been asked to come and do a talk on this for social media for people, like, what should we say or not say? And it's like, that depends on who you say you are, right? And like what you value and what you put out there. And knowing that if you say certain things, you're going to lose a certain audience. If you say other things, you're going to lose some other audience. You can't get all the audiences, right? And you fail if you try, but maybe you don't set out to like piss anyone off, right?
It's so, what you're saying is so important, because that fear of ostracizing, and maybe that's a strong word, but eliminating potential prospects because of the way you deliver, or the values that you keep, or the way you sell, or develop business. Overcoming that fear is literally, I think, what will help you scale faster than anything. And I'm telling you from experience, and anyone listening, that it took a while, but when you try and serve everyone, you serve no one. So, and then there's like that fear of being too narrow. Not enough people are going to see me. Like, you are going to find the right people as you are able to niche down a little bit and narrow that offering to that specific ideal customer or client profile.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat to that, the caveat to that is I lost my train of thought for a second, but basically, where was I going? I had a point. It's gonna come back, but yeah, I think it's large. It's just incredibly important to be aware that oh, that's what it was. Sorry, that never happens. But hey, my COO Eliza always says no one has cornered the market on people, right? Meaning, like, it doesn't matter if there's multiple forms of you. It doesn't matter if there's multiple people that solve the same problem I do. It doesn't matter if there's multiple businesses that need this SaaS software that we have to offer. No one has cornered the market on people, and there's billions of people on this planet. And I really, and again, I think you and I come from the same school of thought in a regard that attention is really, really where it's at. And if you're able to capture that attention, that helps you stand out. But you just have to be okay with the fact that you are going to lose people often. And that is completely okay. I love to think of it as, well, the natural process of elimination continues. Like, that's okay. Now I don't have to do the work. I don't have to do that. I don't have to get to that like final thing where we're about to sign and then they ghost me, like it's
Right.
already done,
Yeah.
like everything's okay. And it's just so much better that way. And I think you're able to maintain a lot of the positive and optimistic energy that you have to find the people or interact with the people that you really want to work with.
Right. Yeah. And then they would in turn really want to work with you because you've laid it out in advance, right? There's not going to be surprises later, which are the death of any deal, right? Is when you start keeping surprised as it goes on. Like there's no surprises. And that's a lot in that personal brand, conversation, right? So the beauty of the LinkedIn and like what you're doing with people and all the different ways to create content is you can either put yourself out there like a robot, like I would like to say, right? Where it's like, especially in B2B, right? Where things are just so boring and robotic and then jargon laden and all the rest of like the knocks, which, like you're talking about people, that doesn't work for people. Like no one, that doesn't resonate with anyone. And, not everything's going to resonate and some things will resonate in kind of a negative way. So like put it out there in advance, right? Like just be who you are. Now, and again, for some of us, like that's easier than for others because some of us naturally do fit into the styles that people would expect. And some of us, our natural expression is a little outside of that. And so, there's going to be some extra challenge there, but either way, you don't want that derailing anything later on. So put it out, in your LinkedIn profile, right? There's like what it says on your website, there's what it says on your profile, like get real clear. It'll attract people who are uniquely attracted to you. Right, like who, like out of all the things, are like, oh my god, I've never seen anyone say anything like that. Like, come on, we have to at least like get together and talk. And it'll send some people away that would have turned out later. Like, well, what do you really think about blah blah blah? Or I'm so surprised that you, in my case, already dropped a couple F-bombs in there. Like, I can't believe, like I've never heard that. It's like, well, if you would have read my profile for like 40 seconds, you wouldn't be surprised.
That's so funny though. I have to hit on that point, which is there's been every single time I see something on LinkedIn that I haven't, like a video or a text post or whatever, of someone who puts something a certain way that I never really contrived. I almost immediately message them. I'm like, we need to connect. Like that was a great, even if it has nothing to do with my business or anything like that, simply by knowing that that's the caliber person that they are, and they're probably around the same caliber people as well. And that's literally how it all starts, right? Like I cannot tell you how satisfied I am right now with like the client roster we have. And then it goes through multiple iterations, right? It's progressive. Like when you start, you take almost anything. And I'm not saying I did that, but I'm just saying what was an ideal customer for me or client in the beginning is not the same as it is now. Right. Now, I mean, they are all extremely high performers, and what we ask, it gets done. Like I don't have to think twice about all these things. They're coachable. They give feedback to us, which is incredibly important. But happens in those moments that you're talking about where you see someone put something a certain way, it's literally like it's like a door opening up and a little bit of daylight. It's like, okay, like what else is behind there? And that's why I think it's so important to jump on it. And one more thing about what you said about people who are not necessarily built for it. That is why it is incredibly important for a company to have shared voice, right? Like you need to, if you have 100 people in the company, like make sure 10 of them are on LinkedIn. You can't make them be on LinkedIn. And yes, maybe you could give them guidelines, but let them talk about what they're doing. If you have your top salesperson, let them talk about sales challenges, sales victories. Let that marketing person talk about this, the operations person talking about these anecdotes, more importantly than anything. And I know this is whatever questions you get asked the most is literally your content. Like, hello, like if people are asking it, there's no way those are the only people that are asking it. Right. So that shared voice really alleviates a concern for that person who's like, no, I'm not getting on camera, or I'm not writing anything. Like a lot of time I see, I mentioned like she's behind the scenes. She loves to be behind the scenes and just taking names and being a savage, but I got her on there a little bit, but I know it's not her comfort zone, and I'm completely okay with that. Yeah. But I just think shared voices is hugely important.
No, I'm with you there, and I think that also, feeding into. I know we had an exchange on one of your posts like last week or something, because, and this is a regular one for me these days, because there's a lot of marketing is full of things being dead, right? So marketing is full of headlines where something's dead. And, for years, even though what's dead changes every so often, so far, nothing's really dead, right?
Sure.
So far, there are some people, I mean, there are some people who can employ cold calling, it ain't me, to actually work for them. Because
Yes.
ironically, if you can do something in a certain way very well, especially if no one else is doing it anymore, then you can stand out, right? So you
Yes.
can have about just about anything work. A colleague of mine years ago used to have a principle called nothing works. Right. And what that really meant was it wasn't nihilism. It was,
Yeah.
it's like, whatever you think, is like the worst practice, like no one could ever do it. Someone could do it and get rich with it. And whatever is the best idea and most sound strategy, you can do nothing with it. Right. There's no like thing that actually works. And obviously we all have our lanes. So you are very strongly in the video content world. And again, I was there for a little bit myself, and now and I used to say similar things, and then, would open it up to like, okay, no, I understand that everything has its place at some points, and that voice, figuring out what that's, what did you call it? The team voice?
A shared voice.
Shared voice, so your shared voice, which for me in our game starts with like the brand strategy, like messaging hierarchy, like knowing what your core message is, and then having people give their individual takes on that and putting it out into the world, knowing what that is. And then if as you get an idea of who your customer is, then like, where are they and how do they consume? Or, in SEO, right? It's how do they even search? How, like, certain people will type things differently, how they are even searching for things, and knowing what that is. And so, knowing that, this person's probably going to be on LinkedIn a ton, and they're maybe not like the biggest the poster or anything, but they're always lurking. So like, here's where our people are, so let's try to reach them there, and let's try to reach them with video. And if we're going to do video, we should definitely work the captions in, right? Because not everyone can turn their volume up necessarily, all those kind of like knowing exactly how people are going to consume it. And some folks, like if you're like me, and I interacted with someone else on the similar point yesterday, right, where it was a colleague here locally who was like, oh, podcasts, like they can blow up so much. And like they showed some chart, with numbers divorced, just like so you could see the line. I'm like, okay.
Yes.
But that how quickly your base can grow, which is true. And you might notice we're sitting here on a podcast I'm doing. So it's not that I don't believe in podcasts, but of course the contrast was like, and when's the last time, you were on a blog post and you read a blog post and then you decided to like read some other blog posts.
Yes.
And I chimed in because it was the day before. It was all of a day since I had been on, now it's HubSpot. And of course they are geniuses at designing these things. So it works this way. I mean, they invented this game practically, but I went from one to another to another. Because it got deeper, they point them well, they build off subjects very well. And me personally, I can read and comprehend reading faster than most people can speak. So when I'm really looking to get down to some information and get what I need out of it, podcasts and videos don't work as well because like I'm waiting for them to get to it.
We're the opposite.
Nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, sorry, keep going. But
So for me, when it's time to like, oh, I need something, not like I'm casual, which is, I think the benefit of podcasts is the way that we listen to things generally. I don't have to sit here and like listen to every second, right? I can do a podcast in the background. I can watch YouTube and have video content. I don't have to focus on it, and I will still get a takeaway. Reading, either you're reading it or you ain't. And so you're either going to take it. So depending on the so what I had told him, right, is like maybe when you work down the funnel, as so to speak, and you're getting into that pragmatic, I need a specific kind of information right now, and I can't wait 20 minutes to see when they work it in to a podcast, then I might go reading. But you have to learn that, right? You have to learn that based on your voice. And it helps if you do a certain thing well. If you write way better than you present, then stick with a blog post, right? If you can wing it and you can rip off a video for like, here, give me a basic premise, give me 5 minutes, which is a series I used to do years ago when I was consulting. 5 minutes forward, I'd come in with an idea and then just talk. And we'd fill 5 minutes, and sometimes it was better than others, but that's my style. Not scripted, not bulleted. Writing takes me a hell of a lot longer. It takes me a long time to write, but again, depending on what the target is of the piece, right? What's the goal for it? Who do I want reading it and for what reason? That's what should determine what we put out, is the strategy and how we reach our folks. My belief is it encompasses all of these different kinds of media, right? I mean, yeah, shoot a video, but then strip that audio. I mean, and Gary V, right, has been telling the planet this for years. Like, here's this one piece of content, this podcast that we're going to break down. It has a video format, it has an audio format. It'll give me clips to put on LinkedIn, right? Then sometimes I won't even show the clip. Like 2 weeks later, I'll just take one of the ideas that we're talking about and then just make it into a post and then see how that goes. You know, it's like it's breaking out based on the key has to be what's your lane and where does that meet where your people are.
I think the mechanisms, there's plenty of mechanisms. And while I did take a strong opinion on blogging, you know why? I mean, like, it was, I could back and in hindsight and just be like, because I don't enjoy writing because it takes a time, a long time for me. And I love to write, but I just don't have that kind of time. Right. So it's like, I look at the return on you know, the time spent, not on the investment, but just like the time spent, you know, like, can I crank out a video in a minute in a driveway? Like, yeah. Or I can write a blog about it and then do the links and the pictures and everything else. I just feel, I at the moment was just thinking about it, and I was in the gym and I was just like, you know, I just don't believe that I've even seen a lot of activity in that world. And it could be, I could be completely oblivious, but the point is this: you can use all the mechanisms for whoever you're trying to attract, and you will probably see one of them stand out more than the other. And newsflash, like, it might not be video, and that's so okay. Like, I completely believe that's completely fine. Maybe you're just really good at short, choppy copy, and you can write 100-word post on LinkedIn, and like every day you could do that without thinking hard. It could be that gets you to the next level, and you will see very quickly who your audience really is, and you could be like, okay, well, I thought I was going to go this direction, but this is what the market's telling me. I'm going to go right here. So I think all the mechanisms are useful in just terms of data and pattern recognition, and one will probably stand out more than the other.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, no, I agree there. And which is where we got to, even I think in the LinkedIn exchange too, right? It's like, all right, well, once we break out the intros and the reasons, it's highly personal and in different directions, personal to what you do best and personal to what the people want to actually consume. So, so one question for the hot tip section here is, you know, for a lot of people, obviously now, and some more and more every day, slow adopters, right? Jumping online, jumping on LinkedIn, you know, in this pandemic and all those kind of crap that's going on, where now events are dead, you know, basically, except for the online ones, which are different. Like, you're going to get different benefits and if any, out of the online ones than the live ones. But so the people who have traditionally done old school networking to develop business, to develop relationships, to do those things, you know, are some begrudgingly and slowly, but coming online into LinkedIn and starting to figure out what's going on there. And to your, you know, like you just said, for some folks, shooting quick video is the best way to go, certainly, because they're way better talkers, though some of them don't realize it, right? It's like, no, you do the same thing as if you were in a room. We're just going to shoot this for like the next minute while you talk, and then that's going to be your content. So besides, you know, I mean, I know that's a hump to get people over. I know personally the pain of that, of trying to coach people into the video, but let's say someone's, you know, they're convinced enough, like, okay, events might not be coming back for 9 months still, right? Or more. So I need a new strategy. I need to do the online, you know, personal brand kind of biz dev thing. And I'm going to be on LinkedIn, because let's say I'm in B2B. So where else would I be? How does someone who's looking to get started without becoming overwhelmed by the newness and the not knowing what's going on? Like, what's a great, like, jumping off place for people? Because, you know, I know some people would say, well, just start making it. And then other people think like, well, you should have some kind of a plan, right? Because so, like, what is your takes? You know,
you mentioned,
getting going.
Mentioned the word lurkers before. Like, just lurk for a while, just look around. I mean, I don't go, when TikTok came out and I was like, is this going to be viable for business? I just kind of looked around. When I didn't understand LinkedIn, I just kind of thought, it was like, okay, work anniversaries, you know, promotions and job seeking and just connecting with other Marines. Like I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
You just have to lurk. So if you don't have a strategy yet, I think the best thing you could do is maybe follow some hashtags about your industry, follow people that you know in your industry, and just watch how interactions happen. Because I think if you don't, if you kind of rush, like be fast but hurry, right? So if you rush into it, you'll probably have like a bunch of posts, which is inevitable anyway. But you're gonna have a bunch of posts. You're like, why did I write that, or why did I post that? But if you kind of get an observation of the landscape, I think that helps number one. So follow some hashtags, follow some people. Just kind of ingest the content, and I think it'll just kind of give you a better picture. And then when you're ready, you're ready. Now let's just say you're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm ready. I got things to say, but I have so much to say, and everyone's saying that. I don't even know where to begin. Like I said earlier, like no one's cornered the market, so just like someone might have information for you specifically more than me if we're talking about the same exact thing. Why? Because of the way you present. Why? Because you have a better reputation, or why? Because you've been in business longer. Whatever it may be, people may want it from me. It doesn't matter. So you can't use that as an excuse to not talk about the things that you believe would be intellectually insulting, because there's always someone who could benefit from what you're talking about. That's huge. So, okay, but I have so many things. What do I want to talk about? This is one thing we always tell our clients. One of the first questions I always ask when we get to their topics is, what can you talk about with your eyes closed? Now, let's just say this person happens to be in corporate communications and he goes, I could talk about baking with my eyes closed. I'm like, baking, like baking bread? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, we'll make sure squeeze one of those in once in a while. Okay, so now that I know that you enjoy, that just helps see what they're passionate about and the energy that they talk about that thing. I'm like, you're going to have to do that with what you're trying to help people out with. So, okay, corporate communications, where should I start there? Here's where you start. Go and look around online. You could do Google alerts. You can get all kinds of topics on. You go to BuzzSumo, see what's being researched, see what's being asked. You could go to Quora. You could go to Answer the Public. I mean, you could do so many different things to just find out what's being discussed. And I think this is where you could stack up like really easy wins. Like the backlog of Google alerts in my phone and computer right now is insane. But I follow personal branding, I follow LinkedIn, I follow content creation, I follow content marketing and all these other things. And you know what? I see an idea and there's times where I'm like, I've already done a post about that. I'm so glad. Like that makes me feel great. And at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I better get ahead of this. I just saw an article about LinkedIn stories. I should, get ready for that. So that way, when it comes out, I am ready to post about it and dissect it in my own way. So you don't have to come up with anything new. What can you talk about with your eyes closed as it pertains to your ideal customer? And then can you do the research to find out what's being discussed? If you are answering anyone's question on the front side, or and maybe they're not asked on LinkedIn, maybe they're being asked on entrepreneur.com or Forbes or something like that. But if you bring it to the attention of audiences on LinkedIn, you're already providing value on the front side, which is what attracts people to you. I know we talked about Gary Vee already a couple of times, but one of the things he said to me when we met a couple of times, on the first time, he said, I'm just trying to give away as much as I can, I'm just trying to give away as much as humanly possible for free. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, it's just so funny. I'm like, yeah, but you're in a position to do that because I don't think so. I think that's how it actually was. Yeah. Because once people find out what you do and what I do and all these things and all the intricacies of what we can teach them, in my opinion, there's just going to be a point where they're just like, I don't want to do all that. But I trust Rich already, or I trust Paul already, and I trust his team and what they do. So let's just do that. That's how it happens. I hate provide value. I'm literally trying to think of something for 2021 to be like, no, we got to just dismiss those two words. But have to bring something good to the table that people want to eat and want to consume. And that's where you win. So answer questions that already exist, and that will probably help you speed up a lot better than just supporting an entire strategy.
Yeah. I would think so. And an important note, and I was talking about this yesterday, is for people that don't know, there's that thing called the curse of knowledge. right? Which is the curse. The curse is you're too close to it to know like what it took for you to know what you know. And so we forget that, other people don't know what we know. And literally this was a client conversation 2 days ago. I'm like, dude, you just said something like 3 things while we're talking that should be LinkedIn posts. If you need me to write them for you, so be it, right? But like, you give me that kernel and like, let's run, because that's not common knowledge, but we forget that when we're experts at something. And even if people do know what you know, there's a hell of a big difference between knowing something, knowing it actively so it influences your actions, and then acting on it, right? I mean, like we all know lots of stuff, but there's a reason that we all love sports analogies because it's business, right? So everything's sports and war. And so like it's like those teams, if you watch those behind the scenes shows for like football teams, I forget what they called on Amazon for years, but they never pick the right team. That team never ends up winning, by the way. I think that's a curse. But but you hear these coaches and they're getting paid, there's a ton of them, and they're getting paid tons of money to yell the same stuff every day. And it's fundamentals, and we're going to do our tire drills. We're going to do there's a certain aspect, from the military, right? Like where it's like, listen, like the job here is reminding until it becomes like ingrained. And even after that, you still need retrains and reminders and things like that. So like, even if it seems like a topic that people know, you might have your own twist on it. They might not know it. And even if they do, it's like, oh, thank you for the reminder. I've been, not paying attention to that for weeks. And you reminded me. So, like you have something to say. And the question is like, what's the best way for you to put it out there, and how do you reach your people? But it's not a question of not having anything to say. If you don't have anything to say, then like you need to go get some other work done because you need to learn some things.
we could not be more aligned on that. So yes, I completely agree, man.
Cool. So one last thing I want to hit on, because I know that you've talked about it with some clients. It's part of the idea of why some clients should bring you on, and also something you're dealing with as your own, as running your own business, right? Is the point at which we have to start giving up control and bring on other people, right? Like the hiring out aspects of what we do, or new things we're adding in, versus trying to control it and do it ourselves. So like, what has been your experience, and what is your advice with people who are walking that line and just not sure which way to go?
I mean, this is so largely important. And I told you at the very beginning of this that my day's been nuts so far. And that's because I was reviewing a 35-page process document from a VA team I'm hiring from a gentleman I know in Dallas. And I'm very pleased with their work, but there was a lot of things that I already scrapped and be like, well, that process changed. And I don't want to screw up anyone, right? But the whole I'm looking at that as like, a star on a Christmas tree. Like I cannot wait to hand off so much of that. It's going to make her job, Eliza's job easier, my job easier, etc. Now, I was a little bit reactive in this regard, and I've tried some stuff, but here's when I say I tried some stuff, I did Upwork things here and there, but it all starts with you. So the most important thing I could say when it comes to offloading, hiring, and all these other things, and this is I would do anything to just go back in time and do this, but is to document the processes for every single thing you do, like in the most fundamentally simple form possible. And what you will end up with is a job description. And if you have that job description and you're able to look at that once a week and just say, I don't have to do all of it. Like, I know there's someone who could do these 10 things. Mm-hmm. And you are going to find yourself on this kind of high and be like, this is going to enable me the bandwidth and the mental energy to do this, or to actually plan for Q1 and Q2. Maybe I could plan out the whole year if I have that kind of focus for the rest of the year now. So it's largely important not to be reactive in the hiring process. I also think it's very, very important not to look at it like you mentioned, and I used to look at it the same way, as like giving up control. You're just empowering someone to do a really good job and contribute to your team and to give them gainful employment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's like another way to look at it. But the more you try and hold on to whatever it is that you do, and I know this has been something that circulates, and the reason we hear some of the things over and over is because they're true. And one of those things is, you're not the only one who could do it. like, hello, like you're not the only one who could do these things. Like I was editing video this morning and I stopped and I'm like, what am I doing? I have editors. I was just trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
But what did that accomplish for me? Maybe some proficiency, but I don't need to be doing that, especially if I'm paying people to do it, especially if they're faster and better at it than I am. So there's people who could do it better. And if you document everything, and I think it'll really help you kind of create that vision on paper or on a document that allows you to say, okay, like I'm ready. Here's where we are. We're making this much. Like we could afford this much. Let's make a good offer, and just don't skimp on it. That's probably the biggest advice. I've tried to definitely get creative in terms of who I hire, where I hire from, and all these other things, just because it just seems so good. And I love margins, right? I love like the fact that like overhead is so low, but you know what? I'm now at the point where I'm happy to pay myself basically nothing in order to just put it back into the business with the right people, right person, right seat on the bus. You're going to go very far.
Awesome. Well said, and I'm going to leave it there without adding my stuff to it. But the last thing, Rich, is how do people get to you if they're looking to get to you?
Yeah, obviously LinkedIn is where I love to live. So Cardona on LinkedIn. I used to have video strategist on there, but I took it off. So just Rich Cardona, you find me. And then I'm Rich Cardona _ on Instagram, on Twitter. And I also have a podcast for entrepreneurs as well, where I just interview people who are not veterans like I am, because I believe it's important to get some of the advice from experts out there and not just ourselves. So that's called the Leadership Lock. You definitely hear our insights when you get time if you want. But yeah, thank you for having me, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for the time, especially hopefully it gave you some reprieve in the middle of the morning you're having here. And,
Yes.
and I know we definitely covered some stuff that'll be valuable. We'll definitely be providing value, as you love to say so much with this podcast.
Let me know if you come up with thing, because I want to steal it, but let me know.
Yeah. I will. I'll put our team on it and see what we come up with. Value add is my least favorite. I much prefer providing to adding value added. Like if you're not adding value, like what the hell are you doing, right? But different rant for a different day. But thanks again, Rich. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.